Shoftim, Chelik Yudalet, the first Sikh of Chelik Yudalet, which also fits with the project of Likutei Sichos. We're happy to do that. And we're going to learn the first Sikha. And this time I'm going to mention, during the course of the Sikha, I'm going to mention certain things that the Rebbe wrote, interesting things. I mean, the Rebbe's Magid the Sikha, so many things that the Rebbe wrote, but some things I would mention. Actually, a few of the things I even gave to print, that they print Ksav Yad, but a few things I'm going to mention as we go learning the Sikha. So I'll give a little background to the psukim that the Sikha goes on. It starts off, Torah says in Shoftim, Kapitel Yud-Ches, starting from test, that you're coming to Eretz Yisrael, don't learn lases kesiavas hagoyim. Don't learn to do the disgusting things the nations do. Don't have people mavir b'nei yabite beish, take through your children fire, kesim ksomim meinim nachash machashev. There are all kinds of magicians, different types. Chayil chover, chayver chover, sheilei v'yadeni, deira shalamesim. People would go and speak to the dead, and all this is in order to find out what's going to be in the future. All these things. So it says, don't go there. It's disgusting for Hashem, those that do these things. And because of these disgusting things, Hashem is chasing them out of the land for you. In other words, to make the place for you. And then the pasuk says, "Tomim tiyem Hashem alekecha." You shall be tomim with Hashem your God. Now we'll touch what the word tomim means soon, but the word is tomim. In other words, don't do that. Just tomim tiyem Hashem alekecha, be tomim with Hashem. And then the pasuk continues. Either way, here ends end of Revi. Chamishi starts right here, and then the Torah after this pasuk says, because these nations that you're inheriting their land, they go to these magicians. But you, Hashem didn't do it. There will be a Navi, but if you want to go to hear things, you will go to the Navi, like me, Moshe says, and you listen to him. This is the parsha. So the pasuk says, "Tomim tiyim Hashem alekecha." Zog the Rebbe Azay. The pasuk "Tomim tiyim Hashem alekecha." In the pasuk where it says, "Be tomim with Hashem, your God." Ma'atig Rashi kol hakosuf. So Rashi quotes the whole pasuk. Sometimes mostly Rashi quotes the headlines in the Dibur HaMaskal, a few words from the pasuk. Here's the whole pasuk. It's a short pasuk, so he quotes all the words. Tomim tiyim Hashem alekecha. Umefarish and he teaches it like this. What does tomim mean? He's halach in imei b'tmimos. You should go with him with tmimos, which means, I don't even know how to translate in English, with sincerity, wholeheartedly. It's a certain feeling that you should have. You should go with Hashem with a certain sincerity, with a certain feeling of tmimus, with the tzapalai, and you should hope for him. I say this, don't investigate, don't dig deep into the future. Everything that will come to you except with this tmimus, which means the sincerity or the wholehearted, we know what it means. V'chulu, etc. The Rebbe writes here v'chulu because there's another piece to this Rashi, but the Rebbe does not quote it yet. So he quotes the first part, and then he asks kashas. Then he says, "I'll quote the second part." So he didn't quote it yet, and the last kasha is there too. But the Rebbe quoted the first part of Rashi. So the Rebbe said, "Tzorach love," we have to understand. Number one, kama v'kama pomim nemer b'teira tomim. The word tomim is written in the Torah many times. By Noach it says tomim hoye b'dereisa. He was a tomim in his generations. Avraham it says, Hashem said to him, "Go in front of me and be a tomim." By their karbonis, it says, "Tomim Rabbi shetzarich lista." Many times it says tomim. The Rebbe in Order 4 brings many places in the Torah where it says when the korban, you bring a korban, has to be a tomim. So why all of a sudden when we come here the word tomim, which is probably 10th time the Torah says the word tomim, here Rashi has to tell us what tomim means. It's a pella. Why here? Obviously, we know what it means from all these psukim from before. Number two, base. Prote Pirusha, the details of his Pirush, which is his halach. These are the words that his Rashi explains what the word Tomin means. Before he asked Tam, why does Bechlali have to explain what it means? Now they said that he does explain. He goes through a whole arichas, mentions many details. His halach, you may be tmimus, go with him with tmimus. Tetzapale, you should hope for him. I see this, and you should not look deep into the future. Everything that comes to you, except with mimas. So Rashi, in the word Tomim, puts in all these details. We know Rashi doesn't say anything except Pshat. If Rashi says this is what the word Tomim means, Rashi feels that in this word Tomim, this lies. How do all these things lie in this word Tomim. Another thing, Gimel. From till now it was in chat, in Teichen. Now it's a diuk in a word. Because of Nemar Haloshen, the Apostle uses a Loshen, Shayel, Deirish. He says when he speaks about the Goyim, he says, what did the Goyim do? He says, Shayel Evi Yadeni. They ask these magicians, Evi Yadeni, Deirish Ala Mesim. They search into the Mesim. So it means they're looking into, uses the word Shayel and Deirish. Aber Rasha case of Tachker. Rasha doesn't say these words, he changes. Rasha says Tachker. Actually, originally when the Rebbe wrote this Ha'ara, and I'll explain later why. The Rebbe wrote this Ha'ara, this Kasha, this whole Kasha, the Rebbe wrote with Tzadiyot Kedesh. Originally, actually, he wrote that Rasha is Mishane, changes from the Lashon HaPosik, then he crossed himself out the word Mishane, and he said, Ava Rasha case of Tachke. Rasha writes Tachke. So obviously, the Rebbe wrote clearly changes, but it's not called a change because he's not like talking about the same words that the Posik says before, and he changes the word. The Rebbe just asked if he's coming behemshech to what it says before, what they do. So here, Rasha should have written the same Lashon. So the word Mishana doesn't really fit, but that's what he wrote and crossed it out. Okay, so this is kashas. These are kashas in the first part. Achakach Masayim Rasha, and then Rasha finishes off and says like this. After he writes all these details of what Tommy means, he says, V'oz tia imei ulechelke. Then you will be with him and to his chayla, to part of him. That means the schar of going with tmimis, chulu, and all the details. What's the schar? What's the reward? Tia imei ulechelke. You will be with him and to his chayla. So we have to understand. First of all, Aleph schar mitzvah zubipshuta shel mikraman de chashmei. Where does the Torah mention a schar for this mitzvah? It's a mitzvah tomim tim Hashem lekecha. The Torah doesn't mention any reward. How come Rasha all of a sudden decides to write that there is a reward? If you do this, you'll be rewarded, you'll be with him, and you'll be his chayil. And number two, how does Rasha know? And Rasha, everything is from the pshat of the pasuk that this is the schar. The schar is imei lechelke. Where does Rasha take it from? So first of all, why does Rasha b'chal bring the schar? Where does the Torah say schar? And especially this specific schar. Now, Meforshim, Meforshim will say, yeah, you know where Rasha takes it from. The kavanas Rasha means like this. Haposik tomim tiye im Hashem alekecha nichlek l'shnayim. They learn that Rasha divides the posik tomim tiye, these two words, and then im Hashem alekecha divides it into two separate things. Tomim tiye hu atziv elodam. Tomim tiye is the command to the person what he should do. He's halachim bit mimus. He should go with mimus, and then all these dots means all their things. And you should hope for him and don't look after the future and everything except kibul kabel bit mimus. That's Rasha's pshat in the word tomim tiye. And then when it says in Torah further, Im Hashem Alekecha, with Hashem your God, who aschad. The Torah lechatchila meant this as a schar al ki matzivot. That it's a reward for keeping the commandment of Tomim Tiyah. What's the schar? And that's what the Torah is telling. Tiyah imei lechelke. You will be with him, and the schar, that's the schar is in the words Im Hashem Alekecha. If you are Tomim Tiyah, you will be Im Hashem Alekecha. That's how they learn. Now the Rebbe says in order 8. For sure, you can't learn that Rashi just telling us two pshatim in the pasuk. That can't be, Rebbe says. Why? And he says because if it would be a second pshat, this inyan of ti imel should have said dovaracha. It's a new pshat. So it's not two pshatim. So they learn also it's not two pshatim. They just learn there are two parts of the pasuk. Tomim tiyah is the first whole arichas that he says what tomim is, and then the Torah says im Hashem alekecha. Then you will be with Hashem in tzedek. They even say a reason why Rashi has to learn that way. Because Tomim Tiyah, Mishnemer Ba'avrom, Hayei Tomim V'Sulei. The Torah should have said Tomim Tiyah. When the Torah says Tomim Tiyah, we know already what it means. It means be Tomim with Hashem. We see by Avrom Avinu. It says David should Hayei Tomim. It didn't say Im Hashem Alekecha. So you don't have to write it. So with the Torah, he says here Im Hashem Alekecha, my Kamash. Why does the Torah tell? What does the Torah mean with the Im Hashem Alekecha? That's what Rasha says. Im Hashem Alekecha, Ini B'fnei Atzmei. Hashem Alekecha is a separate inyan, which is the schar kiyuma mitzvah, the schar of the mitzvah. The Torah is telling us here in the pasuk the schar. By Avram, we also see that after David told him Tomim Tiyah, he says to him, "Ve'etna brisi beini v'necha, I will make a covenant with you. I'll give you a schar." The mitzvah through the mitzvah Tomim, the Torah says schar. So here also they learn that Tomim Tiyah, the Torah tells us what you should do, and there's a schar im Hashem Alekecha, and it's not connected. Now, the way it was written before, when they gave it into the Rebbe, the way it was written here, that according to their pshat, Rasha says the second part, you will be Imei Lechelke, is Dover Chodesh. It's a new thing. And they even added, not a Dover Chodesh, they wrote, Shalei Koyi Adil Ilmenei. It's something that does not go on what it was written before. So the Rebbe crossed out the word, it's a Dover Chodesh, that according to them, this is a new thing, because it's not. They learn it's a schar, but it's not a new thing, it's a hemshech. And also when they put in the words, Shalei Koyi Adil Ilmenei, that according to them, it doesn't go on what it said before. Not only the Rebbe took it out, the Rebbe circled it, and the Rebbe wrote, which you did sometimes, Mavil. It's incredible. How do you even think so? Even according to the way they say, it doesn't mean it doesn't go on the Le'ilmane, it doesn't go on what it said before. It goes on what it said before. But a different prat, it's a schara what it said before. And the way it was written, that it doesn't go, according to them, it doesn't go ad the Le'ilmane. So the Rebbe circled it and wrote Mavil, and obviously took it out. But anyway, this is how they learn Pshat. The Rebbe says we cannot say really this is a Pshat in Rasha. Key number one. According to this, these two things. The first part where he says what Tommy means, he should be bitmimus and hope for him and don't go to look for the future. And then the second part, which is ostia, then you will be imel lechelke, which is the schar, and they're both for different parts of the posik. Rasha, the case of the base Rasha should have written them in two separate pieces. First, Rasha should have quoted from the posik Tomim Tia, not Tomim Tia Hashem Alekecha, and then say these two things. He should have quoted Tomim Tia. Ulafara should explain what that means. It's halachime, go bitmimis, etc., etc. Then the new piece of Rasha with a new divrei, a new beginning, quoting the words Im Hashem Alekecha. Ulafara should explain Osti Melchelke, that what the posik Im Hashem Alekecha means, you will be with him and his chelik, because they're two separate things. Because the Rebbe has this klal, it's an obvious klal, that if Rasha has two things to say on one pasuk, but two different parts of the psukim, he will write it separately. He will quote a few words of the pasuk and write what that's negated to that word, those words. Then there's another, he'll quote other words and write what's negated to that word. He should have done that here too. Since he doesn't, asimin, it's all one. And the second reason why we can't learn like these meforshim, because pashtes loshen Rasha is halachim b'knimus. Simple taich, Rasha is pushed. Very simple. You have to read it the way it says. I've said many times, the word Rasha is yoshor, straight, go straight. The way simple words of what Rasha says right in the beginning, when he teaches what it means, he says, Hisalech imei. It seems that is mashmed im Hashem alekecha kol yad alil. He's like referring to the im Hashem alekecha. Hisalech imei bitmimus, and it says Tomim Tia im Hashem alekecha. The Rasha says Hisalech imei. That's he's referring to that im Hashem alekecha, that im it says in the pasuk. So it goes on before. And this is part of the commandment that you should be tomim. Like the simple pshat in the posik. Not that this is a separate inyan and this is the reward for doing the mitzvah. So it's another reason why it's hard to say that this is the reward and it's a separate part. And Gimel, the third kashi is al derech hapshat. We said before, their reason why they say Rasha holds that Im Hashem Alekecha is the schar, because it's extra. It should have said Tomim Tia, and that's it. Extra words, it means something else comes to tell you the schar. He says, no, you can't say Al Derech Hapshad that the words Im Hashem Alekecha is extra. It's not extra. If you look at the hemshech of the parsha, you'll see. It says before, you shouldn't be amongst you shouldn't find amongst you, means all these magicians, Shayalevi, Yadaini, Videda, Shalamesim, Deda, Shasidis, these are all people of the Zara who look for the future. So the Abisha says, don't be with those people. And then he says, what should you be? You should be not with them, you should be with Hashem. So Rasha, the Pasuk has to say that, because this is the other side of the coin. Don't be with these guys who come to find out things from them, but Tommy, you be with the Abisha. So the word Im Hashem Alekecha is not extra in this case. Maybe you can't say it's extra, and if it's not extra, you can't say it's the schar. And another reason you can't say why like them, maybe the word ima you could say according to them, Im Hashem Alekecha means you'll be with him. It's a schar, you'll be with Eibishter. Rasha get the hakara in the word l'chelke. What does that mean? How does that? Where is in the pasuk a schar of chelke? Ba'ed. So first of all, first he asks, what's the inyan? What does chelke mean? What according to schar of chelke? Because of it, the pasuk it doesn't say chelke, it says im. If that's the schar, then Rasha should have said just Time. What's the Chelke? So from all these inyanim, it's hard to say that what Rasha says in the second half of the Rasha, that it's something, it's a schar that's in the posik. It's a schar, definitely. Rasha says, then you will be, it's a schar. But it's not the pshat in the words of Hashem Alakecha. That's part of the tmimis. So Rasha on his own, so to speak, seems to be adding, you know what, I'm telling you, if you do this, you'll be with him and his chiluk. Where does Rasha get this from? Rasha doesn't give him brachas in his pirush. Doesn't just say his ideas and tells you Musavet that he just, so Rasha must hold that there's something in the word Tomim Ti Hashem Lakecha that you will be Imei V'Lechelke. Where does Rasha get it from? What does that mean? The Rebbe says the pshat is like this. Pirush HaPoshish Shel Tomim B'Chol Mokim Hisholim. Whenever the Torah says Tomim, it's complete. It doesn't have to explain it. It means complete. The Tomim Ti the Neyach Tomim Davrom Pirusha, but it says Neyach David says Be Tomim. Neyach was a Tomim. By Avram it says Be Tomim Pirusham. What does it mean? Sholem b'kiyum rotz tamakadosh baruch. Be complete in fulfilling the Eibishter's will. Now derech zeh pirush Rebbe Meforshim gam because of the law. Even in this pasuk, most of Meforshim touch the same way. That here Tomim means be complete in keeping the mitzvahs, all the mitzvahs of the Eibishter. The Tomim tim Hashem l'kecha pirusha liya sholem im Hashem. You should be complete with Hashem. So the Meforshim learn it. But Rasha doesn't. Rasha has a new thing. Derech hapshat shitas Rasha kan yefshelu parashkin. Rasha says, here you can't learn the regular pshat, that it means that you should be complete in doing all the mitzvahs. In this pasuk, you can't say that. And that's the reason why Rashi feels that he has to type something new here that will fit to the hemshech of the parasha. Why? Teichen ha-parasha, as I said before, the whole teichen of this whole parasha, the whole flow of the parasha is Shalei lasas kadeves hagayim, gamer, mavrib nei, gamer, kesim, psomim, gamer, dere shalamesim. You shouldn't do the disgusting things they do, bringing your children through the fire that David Zora did, and do the kishev and this type of kishev and searching to the dead to find out things. Don't do that, the Torah says. And Yisuri Mesei Mispor Ubediyuk. Torah mentions a specific amount, a few, and specific which Avedas the Torah says which things you shouldn't do. Uka and as the Torah stresses that we're talking specifically about these Avedas, the Torah says, Oise Eile. He says in the pasuk, anybody who would call Ti'avas Hashem kol Oisa Eile, anyone who does these things is disgusting to Hashem. So he says clearly, we're talking about specifically not doing these things. He also says, Ubiglau HaTe'evas Eile, and because of these te'evas, Hashem is kicking them out from Eretz Yisrael. So that means that he's talking here not to do these specific things, these few things he mentions. He mentions quite a few of it, this kishav, that kishav, this kishav, but he's talking only about these. And then what does he say? Don't do that. But Tomim tiyem Hashem alakech. Now, if you're going to say Tomim means like it always means complete, it means complete means all the mitzvahs. So what the Torah is saying, don't do this and this and these few averes, but keep all the Tayag mitzvahs. Does that make sense? Ein masim leim, but it doesn't fit to say leisas eser averes. Don't do certain 10 averes, for instance. But don't do these 10. But you should be careful 365 and keep 248 mitzvahs, because that's what sholem means, complete. That's not how we talk. We talk, don't do this. So we say, these are no good. If you do it, it's no good. So what should you do? Keep these mitzvahs. You should, these mitzvahs said, don't do these things. But the way, if you type sholem, it means clearly saying, don't do these and these and these things, but keep all tayag mitzvahs. The Ramban and says, even the Ramban has a problem. The Ramban doesn't say it, but the Rebbe says the Ramban is bothered by this. How could the Torah, the Ramban learns Tomim here means sholem. He is one of the Meforshim that learn him means complete. So he is bothered. What does the Torah mean? Tomim Ti should be complete, which seems to be complete in all the mitzvahs, and all he's talking about is a few, like 10 or a few avedas. So how does he say, don't do these few avedas and be tomim in all mitzvahs? So the Ramban says, Kavonas HaKosu, the posek means like a shetia tomim Hashem b'chol leila. The posek taka doesn't mean here, he says, be complete with Hashem in tayag mitzvahs. Be complete in these. Sholem be'emunas Hashem b'inyonim eilu. In these things, that's taka complete, but not complete like normal, complete in these mitzvahs. Shalei tishmal meinin in the casement. Don't listen to them. In other words, he says, don't listen to them. But why don't you listen to them? Because he says, because what they're saying is not true. When they want to tell you, you want to find out the future, you're going to go to them, they won't know what they're talking about when they tell you. Everything under Hashem. He could do anything. He could change the whole system, the whole solar system, he could change everything. What's the purpose in going to them? Only from the Eibishter you should find out. How? From the Nevi'im. That's the hemshech further in the parsha. The Rebbe will explain. The Kunta Ramban should be Tomim Tia, and then the pasuk continues because these go to the Chashvim, go to the magicians, but by us, don't go. Go to the Navi. But why shouldn't you go to them? Because you won't find out the truth anyway from them. That's how you learn. So he says Tomim Tia, and these things you should be Tomim. Now, L'chura, this answers the kasha. The kasha was, how could you say Tomim be complete in everything when he's only talking about 10 mitzvahs? So the Rabban Taka says Tomim Tia. Taka does not mean everything. In this case, it means be complete in these mitzvahs. The Rebbe says in simple pshat, it's hard to say the pshat of the Ramban, because the Ramban is not pshut shel mikra only. Rashi, which is pure pshat, cannot follow this, that Tomim Tia means you should be Tomim in these few things that he mentions. Since he says Tomim Tia, and he doesn't mention Tomim Tia in these. Especially, but before when he's talking about not doing it, he mentions clearly, I'm talking about these. Disgusting is Eisa Eila, these. Because of these disgusting things, Hashem kicks him out. So here, if the Torah would mean in these things be Tomim, we would have said the same thing. Tomim Tia B'zeh, or something like that, in these things. And since the Apostle just says Tomim Stam, in opposite, before when he talks about it, he says Eila, and here he doesn't. So obviously, if you touch the word Tomim in Sholem, complete, it means everything. Like it says, Kol mum there should be no mum. Everything should be, and that cannot be. Even the Ramban doesn't feel it to be, but the Ramban answers that you could touch it means Tomim in these. Rasha feels it can't say that. So it must be Tomim complete in everything, and that can be. So we're back to the kasha. What does the word Tomim here mean? Can't be complete, so what does it mean? That's why Rasha says here that the pshat Tomim here is not like all over, which means complete. You should go with tmimus. Tmimus means a certain feeling, a certain sense. You should go like with sincerity. It's a certain feeling we expect you to have. Said by Yankov, Esau was in the field. Yankov was the ishtam. What is ishtam? Ishtam means he was sincere. This was his style. This was the thing. It's not shleim was that he has everything. Tam means ain't a boki. After he says, but Esau went to the field. He did outside. He was able to hunt. And Yaakov Ishtam doesn't know how to do that. Ain't a charif. He's not sharp to do these things that Esau did. So it's not complete that he could do things. Fakir. Elamai, what does Tam mean? Tam means a certain mindset that he had. So the same thing here, that's what the pasuk means here. Tomim Tia is a new pshat. It's not complete. That can be. You should have a complete, a sincere, you could call it wholehearted mindset you should have to the Eibishter. That's what he says. Tomim Tia im Hashem Elokeh. And Rashi explains all the details as we'll see, which fits to this inyan. And the Rebbe says, and now we'll understand how the flow of the psukim is. The first, the pasuk starts and warns us, you should not learn from them to do these bad things. You take your son to fire, different magicians. And the Torah says, Hatam, what's the reason? The Torah says, because all this is disgusting to Hashem. So the Eibishter is not saying, don't listen to them, don't go to them and listen to what they have to tell you, because they don't know what they're talking about, like the Ramban says. Rasha, because it's the Eibishter, the simple chat and posik is because the Eibishter doesn't want it. Not because what they say is not true. So this is what the posik says still now. Later on, also after the posik, it says, starts off these nations, they listen to these magicians. Hashem didn't give that to you. You'll have a Navi to ask questions. But the reason why don't go to them, to the Navi, it's not because what they say is not true. It's because Abish doesn't want it. That's all. It might be true. Like it says, Hashem didn't give it to you. The Eibishter didn't give you to go to the main case. The Eibishter put the Shechina on the Nevi'im and on Durim Betumim that they had in the Mishkan of the Beis Hamikdash. The Mela, don't go to them because that's not the Eibishter. The Eibishter doesn't want that. The Eibishter is only by the Nevi'im. Not the reason the Ramban says Kinal be mentioned Enkel Divrei Mem that the words are not emes. So way Rashi learns the pshat, if you see, Torah says don't go to them because it's disgusting. The Eibishter doesn't want it. That's why you shouldn't go to them. Now the fees there, now the Eibishter says don't go to them because it's disgusting. That's why the pasuk has to continue. I don't want you to go there. Why? Because the Eibishter doesn't want it. But you should be talking with Hashem Alekecha. Claimer, it means that Af Sha'al Yodam Teido Asidis, even if it is true that if you go to them, you will find out the future. Rashi learns, yes, you could find out the future from them. The Kolze, like Tilmat Lasas, nevertheless, the Teda says, don't do that. Kim Tomim Tim Hashem Alekecha, you should be Tomim, meaning His Halachin Mebit Mimas. You should go with Mimas, and B'meila Tetzapale, to go with Mimas, you hope for Him. But in the case, he's saying, don't go, I don't want you to go to them. It's disgusting. So you should be with sincerity to me. And what will that do? That you'll hope to me and not to them. You'll hope to me. That's what he wants. So that's what Asher gets, that Tomim here doesn't mean complete. Tomim just means it's a certain mindset you should get. You should be turned your mind to us, not your mind. I mean, your feeling should be to Hashem. And not to them. And why? Because Hashem doesn't want. And you should only hope to Hashem. But then you have a shaila. They're hoping to Hashem, and you will not go. To ask them, you will not get what you're looking for. You're looking for, why does a person go to the Mechashvan, to the physicians, asking what the future? They want to know the future. They want to know how to behave in the future. So they want to know, what is it? What's going to happen to me? What's going to happen? What should I do? Now he says, don't go. And what should you do? You should be talking Hashem. Be like Hashem wants, and Hashem wants you not to go. Okay, so I won't go. But the problem is if I don't go, and I just look towards Hashem. But I won't gain what I want to gain by going to them, which is Yediyas Hasidis, knowing the future. To know how to behave. So if I'm not going to them, I'm going to look towards Eibishter. Fine. But I'll miss out. And especially according to Rashi, according to Ramban, it's not a problem. According to Ramban, Eibishter is saying there's no purpose in going to them. They don't know what they're talking about. So you won't gain anything. But Rashi, who learns that by going to them, you would know, they do know what they're talking about. Nevertheless, I don't want you to go because you have to look to me. So the person is going to tell you, and that's a seichel, that's a pshat thing. When we talk about seichel hayosher that might come, that's part of the pshat. How could the Torah tell me to sapale, and I'll be missing out what I want, and if I go to them, I'll get. Rashi said, so obviously it must mean you should not look into the future. When it says Tomim, which means go with the Tmimus, means hope to the Eibishter. Hope to the Eibishter. Don't care about the future. Don't look into what's going to be in the future. So Rashi has to say that because otherwise we'll be stuck. Since Rashi learns Tomim means it's a certain mindset to look into the Eibishter and not to go to them, and they really could help you, but the Eibishter doesn't want. Rashi feels that, like over the Ben Chomish Mikol will ask, because someone will learn and say, yeah, good. So you can't go to them, and you don't get your, and they would tell you that what's going to happen, and now you're missing out. It's a problem. So he says, Lo Yachir. So I'm telling you, don't look into the future. Don't investigate what's going to be in the future. Right? You can't time it, but I won't know the future. Don't look at the future. He doesn't want you to look at the future. Avadain in the movement, there's still a problem. If you won't look into the future, you always worry. Worry, what will the day bring? We see we always worry what's going to be. So I'm going to have a worry. So I'm going to miss out. You're telling me I shouldn't. Good, but I have a worry. And the Rebbe adds here, right? It's the opposite of tmimus. Tmimus means when you're sincere, straight, good. But if I'm going to have a worry is the opposite of tmimus. So it's bothering me. So it's not sincere. It's my mind. So a person, Kataina, you're telling me I should hope to Hashem and not care about the future, but it's going to bother me. But you want me to be a Tomim. You have to give me the tools to be able to be a Tomim. Rashi continues, he adds these, has to add these words. When everything comes to you, Take the tmimis. Anything that comes to you, meaning good or bad. Halicha b'tmimis im Hashem alekecha, going with tmimis with Hashem, keleles gam zeh lekabel, kol ma sheyovei olav meis HaKadosh Baruch Hu bein leteiv bein chulu. Accepting everything yet. That's what Rashi means when he says everything that will come take with tmimis. It means even if it's bad, you should take it anyway. Oh, which means you take it b'menucha or b'tmimis, with calm. But maybe you won't worry. Kasha was, the guy might say, I'll worry if I don't go. Don't worry. Because if you are tamim, what are you worried? Maybe something bad will happen. Maybe if I do this, it won't be good. If it won't be good, it doesn't matter. Because if you're a tamim, you take everything David gives you. And David says in order 17, Mishanema, like it says, you shall love Hashem your God. Rashi says in the Schanon, the second pshat dover acha b'chol meitcha means b'chol midah shemeited lo. Any midah that he gives you, any way he behaves with you, you have to love Hashem anyway. So obviously here Rashi could mean that too because he said it already. Well, Loshen Razal, the Chazal used the Gemara in Brocha, the kabluni b'simcha. Whether it's good or bad, you always have to accept it with simcha. I want to mention an interesting thing here. The first time when they give when the Rebbe was Magiya the second time, he added a few lines here. First, it said only on this ha'orah. It said in the Pnim. It says that you should accept everything good or bad from the Eibishter. Accept it. So it said, like the Chazal say, the Kalbuni b'simcha, accept b'simcha. So in the second Haggadah, the Rebbe added the first part because that's from Chazal. Chazal's Gemara. We know Rashi doesn't rely on the Gemara. Rashi is only what he says, unless he brings a Gemara. So the Rebbe added these words. It says in Rashi such a thing. And earlier, because Rebbe always says Rashi doesn't rely on something that's later. And earlier, in Vaschanan already, Rashi said that b'chol meitcha b'chamida shakem made it law. But b'meile, this is what the pasuk means. So this answers everything. So the shaila is you have to hope to Hashem and l'chora, but I'll worry. Says, no, if you're a tamim, you won't worry because no matter what will happen, you accept. Now that's the first part of Rashi. Then Rashi comes and adds the oz. Rashi says, you will be imei l'chelkei. So now we have to go behemshach to this. How does the second half of Rashi fit? So the Rebbe says like this. There's a possibility to say that behemshach lo zeh, that behemshach to what we said pshat in the Rashi, case of Rashi writes the next word, you will be with him in his chelik. So Rashi leila farach. Maybe Rashi doesn't use these words to tell you pshat in the pasuk. After Rashi explains what tmimis is, and it's a certain mindset. Tmimis, you look to Hashem and you don't care what will happen. You don't look into the future, and you accept everything bad or good. You accept tmimis. But the shaila is, how does that work? How could you do that? So Rashi wants to explain to us how you do it. So Rashi says, that this yediyah that we said that before takes away all the worries, like we said. He will be with the real tmim. He will be with tmimis amitis. Paket is adding. How could a person talk about with tmimis? Because you have to be ready that anything will happen, but it's still what bothers you. So Rashi adds, I'm telling you, you'll have all good. First we said he would worry, maybe something bad will happen. We said, no, whatever Hashem gives you. But then Rashi adds, you could say l'chura this pshat, because you should remember, you will be with Hashem, and you'll have a chelik b'meila Hashem, you'll have everything good. So you have nothing to worry, not only because if it's bad, you'll also accept it. Maybe Rashi explains that you could be vitmimis. But Rashi, you can't say this is what Rashi means. Because according to that, first of all, how does Rashi know it? If it's not in the pasuk, Rashi is just giving like a good word, telling you should know, you'll be good, all the time. Where does Rashi get is that it'll be imei l'chelkei. And second thing is, if this is an explanation how it could be tomim, so after Rashi goes through the whole first part explaining what it means, he should have said, shaharei, how could you do all this? Because there'll be imei l'chelkei. But lay ostia, but not like Rashi says, then you will be. Then means like what's going to happen. Not telling you why I'm telling you tmimis, because this will be. So you should have said shaharei. He's assuming that this is not what Rashi means. In other words, this is not Rashi is making up a schar. So besides the shalom where Rashi gets it from, but the idea is he's not making up a schar to make a person feel good how he could be determined. So what does Rashi mean? Rabbi says, so the pshat in Rashi is like this. This pasuk comes behemshach to the whole parsha. Now, if it's behemshcha to the whole parsha, what does the pasuk say? The pasuk says, don't do these things, don't go to these magicians, don't do all this. Why? Because Hashem doesn't like it, it's the Avis, and because of what they're doing, Hashem is chasing them out of the land. Give it to you. And then he says, Tamim Tim Hashem Alekecha. So since this is the Hemshech HaParsha, Mizeh moving, so we understand, the Kishem Sheb Glal HaTeva say Hashem Alekecha, Meiri Sheisa Min Ha'oretz Mipanecha, because of what they're doing, these things, these terrible things, Hashem is chasing them out of the land. Came the Midah Teva Lachas Kama V'Kama. So when the Rebbe says, you should not do that. And not only that, be Tomim, even though they know what they're talking about, but don't go and be Tomim with the Eibishter. So obviously, it makes sense that the Torah should have included here that it'll be the opposite. By them, he's chasing them out of the land because of this. So what will happen to you if you do keep this? The Tomim Tim Hashem Alekecha. So the Eibishter says, this is a punishment. So you Tomim Tim Hashem Alekecha, there'll be a reward. And the reward should be the same reward as they have the punishment, which is Yerush Kasaretz. If their punishment is they're being chased out of the land, your reward will be you'll get the land. And that must be included here. Somehow the Torah must mean it because that's how the flow of the parsha is. That's what Rashi continues. Oz meaning this is always the Torah must be telling us that if you are Tomim and you do as we said before, you will be with him and his chelik. Now what does that mean? I've asked before, what's chelke? What is the touch of the word? Besides the word as ever saying the pasuk. What's the touch? So Rebbe says like this: you'll be his chelik. Chelke shalakadosh baruch chelik of Hashem. A yid is a chelik of Hashem. It's a pasuk. Since Yidden are chelik of Hashem, what does the pasuk say in Hazinu? After the pasuk says Yidden are chelik of Hashem, the pasuk says, therefore Yarkeveyu al bama seyaretz. He makes you ride on the mountains of the land, which means you will get Eretz Yisrael. So it says, because the Yidden are a chelik of the Eibishter, that's why the Yidden get Eretz Yisrael. Artzei shalakadosh baruch as the Eibishter's Eretz, and he gives it to you. So chelke means you are a chelik of him, which means, because like Rashi says over there in Hazinu, you are a chelik of him, so the Eibishter gave Eretz Yisrael. So this is a pasuk that's written in Hazinu. So can't say Rashi relies on this only. Like Mishnah it says also earlier. In Eikev it says, Eretz Asher Ein Hashem Alekecha Bo. Eretz Yisrael is a land that the eyes of Hashem are there. And Rashi says, Moshe LaMelech, Moshe to a king, Shoy LeBonim Yesh LeSodes. He had more than one child, he had children, sons, and he had fields. Asher LeBen Shoei of Nesis Odachitoiv. The one that he loves, he gives the best field. And that's the Gabbai the Eden. And that says earlier in Eikev, that David loves the Eden, and that's why he gives him the best field, he gives him the best land. Ukas cholos parsha zu, this parsha it says, Ha'oretz asher av Hashem alekecha noisin lacha. The Ha'oretz Hashem gives you. Right before this pasuk it says that David is going to give us Eretz Yisrael. Because he says, Meirish eisom Eretz Yisrael, Hashem kicks him out from Eretz Yisrael. Mipanecha. What does mipanecha mean? He kicks him out in front of you, for you. That was, in order for you should get it. So he says already, give me. It says already a long time ago in Parsha B'Shalach. It says, this nation you were kainer, and bring them in and settle them in the mountain of your inheritance. And what does it mean? Amzu kanisa, you were kainer this land, this nation. Chivafta mishar umes. You love them more than all nations. Therefore, bring them in. So this is what the pasuk means here. When the pasuk Tomim Tia, they do it and they're kicked out. So Tomim Tia, so Rashi says has to be. So it's obvious things which are obvious from the pasuk, even though it doesn't say it, not even the remez. It's part of Pshuta Shemikra. In other words, according to this pshat, when Rashi says that Osti lechelke, Ime lechelke, is not the pshat of the words Im Hashem Alekecha, like we said before. That's what he says in Orah 18. Avalei shezeh pirish Im Hashem Alekecha. That's not the pshat, because we said before, this is part of the Tomim Tia. It is part of what you should do, not part of the schar. And the Rebbe adds, this explains why Rashi in his pshat brings the whole pasuk. In order, what does Rashi tell us? What Tomim Tia means? What's Tomim here? So Rashi goes to the whole thing, what Tomim is. And we know Rashi, when he brings words of the pasuk Dibra Maskal, only brings those words which are negated to the Pirush. So here, really, Rashi should have said Tomim Tia, and on that, go into the whole thing. See, according to the other Meforshim, we understand why he says in Hashem. Then we have another problem. He should have made it into two pieces. But according to the Rebbe, that this Im Hashem Lekecha is part of the Tomim, and when he says Im Elchelke is what will happen to you as a reward, but that's included in the pasuk. Why does Rashi bring? So he should have only said Tomim. So the Rebbe says because of this, to show that Im Hashem Lekecha is connected. That's part of Tomim Tiyah. Like we learn Poshup Shat, not like the Meforshim that say that this is already the Im Hashem Lekecha is the reward. If Rashi would have just quoted the words Tomim Tiyah, the Geimer, then we would think like the other Meforshim that the Atebes Im Hashem Lekecha Sherak Meramzon Teichen Aschar, that the Rashi would not quote the word Im Hashem Lekecha. Just write the Geimer, just a Remez. Oh, we would say probably that's the Schar Mida Keneged Miga. That's why Lochem Meramzon. That's why Rashi's Meramis. That's why it's Meramis. So the Peil Mamish, Rashi have to tell us that it's part of the Tomim. Rashi quotes the whole post. Let's go back. But according to this, you have a problem. So we're saying now the Eibishter says like this: don't go to the magicians. They know what they're talking about, but I don't want you to go. It's disgusting. Eibishter doesn't want it. Tomim, you should be Tomim with the Eibishter. The kasha is after this post, the parsha continues. It says like this. These goyim, they listen to these magicians. Hashem didn't give you this. I'll put up a novi, like Mishnah says, like me, David should give a novi, and him you should listen. What is mashma in the words? Mashma in the words is that don't listen to them, but you should listen to the novi. So he says like this. That's the hemshah. That's what it says right after Tom Hashem. According to Ramban, the Tomim means you shall be complete with the Eibishter. And don't listen to these guys, because these guys don't know what they're talking about. Moving Hemshech HaParsha, we understand the whole Hemshech of the Parsha. The Torah says, why shouldn't you listen to them? Because you're going to listen to I'm going to make even Novi. Go to the Novi. The Bnei Yisrael Yishmershu Fasidas like they are Novi. You could ask the Novi the proof, the future. And he's telling him, according to the Ramban, they're the only ones that tell you the truth. So he says in the Pasuk, don't go to these guys. You don't know what you're talking about. Come to the Novi. Tomim. Tomim means in these things don't do. Be complete in these things, don't do it. Go to the Novi, because the Novi will tell you the truth. The Novi is going to speak in the name of the Eibush and he'll tell you the truth. So according to him, the Hemshech fits. According to Rasha, it's a stira to what it said before. It says like this: Tomim Tia Pirushikinal. Tomim Tia, according to Rasha, means like we said before. Even though they tell you the truth, because Tilma. Nevertheless, don't learn from them. Kim Tomim Tia Hashem Alekecha. You should be Tomim Leitach Kerachalasidis. Don't look for the future. Because if you go to them, you'll find out the future, and they'll tell you the future, the true future. But we don't. The Eibishas don't look for it. And take Lachas, and then right away he continues. Key, because they go to the magicians, and you should come, Tomim Tiyah, and you go to the Novi and listen to him, which means that you are allowed to find out the future. They Novi. It's a strange thing. First he says, don't go, and Rasha Taichas means don't go to them, even though you'll find out the future from them, because I don't want you to look into the future. And then he says, and the reason why, because I have a Novi for you. That means the Novi you could ask. Isn't it a contradiction what he said before? The Pshat is like this. The Pirush Rashi, according to Rashi, all the things that it says after the Pasuk Tomim Tiyah, which is after when Chamishi starts, ain't a hemshech v'tam l'parsha shelaponot. That's not a hemshech to what it says before, as a reason for before. Alas cholos in Chodesh, it's a new beginning. Shakadosh Baruch Hu Yokem Novi, the Eibush will give you a Novi. That's what it is. And it's not a hemshech. The Ramkon, the Ramban, it's a hemshech. According to that, it's a hemshech. It starts off because, ki means because, so it means like a hemshech. It's not a reason. See, ki sometimes means because. So it's not here because al nemer lifnei is what it's on what it says before. Sometimes ki means when. But we find in many parashas in Torah. Like even in this parsha, in the order the Rebbe says, it says in this parsha starting, it says ki ata bo al order. It doesn't mean as a hemshech before when you will go. So here Rashi will learn this is not a hemshech to before. But the calls are Lepirish Rashi. It's only according to Rashi Shaderech Hapshat. According to Rashi, it's Pshat. And therefore, as we said before, you can't learn Tomim is complete. Not even like the Ramban completing these things. Rashi says it needs to be Tmimis. So according to them, it's a new parsha. It's a new Inyan starting. It's not a hemshech to before. So according to the Ramban, it's a hemshech to before. It's a reason for before. And according to Rashi, it's not. And the Rebbe in Order 26 actually adds, this explains another thing. Tomim Ti Hashem Lakech is the end of Aliyah. A Kriya, the end. We start Chamishi here. Why do we start Chamishi here? It's the middle of an Inyan. It continues. Ki, because. You should do this because. So, according to Rashi, we said it's not a new Inyan. It's not a Hemshech, it's a new Inyan. According to Ramban, this is the reason for before. Why are we stopping in the middle? Said by the sometimes we find these things that there's a question: what's the hemshech? Why is this a hemshech like that? Why is there a hefsek? I mean, in the aliyahs. So the Rebbe adds this derech hagav. Then he says that a sefer me'era eir Rabbi Yarmayish, the seder sima parshis, sefer darke chaim v'sholem, and he brings them in Hogya from the Rabbi Gon Chum Munkach, Bala Machaber sefer Minchas Elazar. He added these. So I just want to say how this ha'orah came. First, the Rebbe wrote part of the ha'orah. Then in the second Haggadah, he added the second half of the ha'orah with Ksav Yad Kodesh. He added the whole second half. And then the Rebbe added a few more words. And I want to say this is something good to know, and someone should maybe look into this. The Rebbe added like this. He said, he wrote, Levarer, which is writing not as a ha'orah, he's writing it to the people who wrote the Sichas. He says like this. I'm asking you, the Rebbe, Levarer, to find out, is there something about this in the Sidr Hageinim that Weinstock gave out? The Rebbe said to check. The Pale Mamesh, the people who looked into this couldn't find anything there. So the Rebbe wanted, if you find something, to tell him, and he'll put something more, and it wasn't found. So nothing was left. Since the Rebbe wrote it, I could guarantee that probably someplace in those photos there's something there. Couldn't find. But the Rebbe wrote, Levarer, I'm reading the words again for people who want to do in this. Levarer in yesh bozeh besider hage'enim chulu, and in parentheses, Weinstock Shir. So I think somebody who has the time and has this, a Svarim, should look through the whole Sefer and they'll find something shaykhs to this. Because I'm sure that the Rebbe, but he just didn't have the time to look it up, so he said to look, and if he didn't find it, so it's not mentioned here at all, but that's what the Rebbe wrote in his Ksav Yad. But anyway, the Rebbe says here, so according to Rashi, this is a new Inyan when it starts from here. According to Ramban, it's like a problem. Why is there Chamishi? But then he says, and by the way, this is clear in Pshat that here is a new Inyan, not a Hemsh, not a Kigagayim, is not a reason for before. Because even name of the Parshas Kagayim Elu Hemshech LeParsha Kedemis, if we're going to say that Ki, but it says further, because these Goyim, they go to the Ma'anim Kaisim, and you will have a Novi. If it's a Hemshech, if that's a hemshech, so why does he start? He kept on saying before people, these guys go to the Kain and Data Shalom Mesim and all these things, Kaisuk Somim. Then he starts, because these Goyim go to the Mainanim. Why say it over again? He just said it in Mamish. So if it's a new Inyan, yeah, by that time the Torah starts off, because these guys go, I'm going to give you a Novi, whatever. So it makes sense. So anyway, Pshat, this is a new Inyan. So but Lepel Mamesh, the Torah does say, even if we'll say it's a new Inyan, but Sof Kol Sof, he says, go to the Novi and Eilot Lishmon. These guys, after he says, go to the Kaismin, you go to the Novi. He's mashmer that the Novi, you could go to the Novi, which comes back to the stira that he said before, Al Tachker Achar Hasidus, don't look into the future. Don't follow them. He said, don't follow them.
Kids, come on. I'm an expert.
You know what I'm saying?
You're telling me?
Mute out.
4 kids, 5 grandkids.
So,
I'm an expert.
Before he said, Al Tachker. Part of Tomim Tiyah is don't look into the future. Al Tachker, I said it. And here it comes out as a tak, it's a new parsha. But nevertheless, Sof Kosov, he says, You could go listen to the Navi, as if saying they go to them and you go to the Navi. So it seems you could. I want to mention that when the Rebbe said the Sikha, as you see at the end of the Sikha, Pasha Shoftim Tovshin Chav Zayin, the Rebbe's teretz on the kasha was, when he asked the Shaila to steer, according to Rasha, you shouldn't look after Hasidas, and here it says, go to the Navi. The answer, the way the Rebbe said it then was what he says till now. That it's a new parsha. So the people who wrote the Sikha wrote that teretz. The kasha was to steer. First he said, don't look at this, and here it says you could. It's a new parsha, it's a new thing. So what the Rebbe did, when it comes to these words, the Rebbe, when it said this kasha, and the teretz was it's a new parsha, the Rebbe wrote these words. Where's the teretz of the kasha? How is this? In other words, the Rebbe is saying how this word that it's a new parsha will answer the kasha. The kasha was as a stira. First, Rashi said, like I'll see this, don't look in the future. And then later, the Pasuk says that the Navi, you could ask the Navi. A stira. So he gives a teretz, it's a new parsha. So, but the fact is still a fact. Teretz says a fact, go to the Navi. So the Rebbe wrote, where's the teretz? And by Fabrenga, the Rebbe didn't say the teretz. He said the teretz, but he said this and didn't finish off. And a lot of times there's the Sikha the Rebbe said and expected that you'd understand yourself. So the Rebbe asked, where is the teretz of the Shaila here? And the Rebbe added the last paragraph we just learned, and the next paragraph. This paragraph, and the next paragraph. He added. And these are the words he said. But Sofkosov, it says you could ask Hasidus. The Gambik Suvim did don mashme b'chol could. And here, even in this, in our Pesukim, it says, the main problem because the magicians are doing it. But Lepel, the Etzem, by a Novi who is not a magician, Chas v'sholom, you could ask. So it's Bestira, the Parsha Akademis. It's the Stira, the previous Parsha, which says Al Tachke. That's why Rashi writes the word Leib Tachke. And the Rebbe Shaila was, it's a shin, here says it's a change, because in Posik Gabet Goyim it says Deire, Shoyel, why does it say Tachke? It tells you that Leib Tachke Dafke. Ishtadlos Yisera, you can't be Cheke, you could ask a Novi. Chekire means, Hameir Al Daiga Yisera, means you look into your Cheke, you investigate. That means you're worried. That not. Hashenk is Shaila Ba'alma, Vafila Drisha. But just to ask it, even to look into it, you could. So you could ask a Novi. And that's the answer. And I believe this is why the Rebbe added the Shaila. I said in the beginning, Kasha Gimel, he's added, why does Rashi use the word Tachker, not Sheil and Deirish? It's all because to get to the Teretz. That's the Teretz of this Shaila. That's what the Rebbe added. And he left it out by the Fabrengen, for why I don't know. But Lepel Mamashiri added this. So he added this paragraph. So this is according to Rashi.
So the Chori could say that this is a Hemshech Echad, according to this Pshat. If the Dik is al Tachker, so maybe it's a Hemshech Echad.
The Lapel, it's not.
Maybe it's a Hemshech.
That's why the Rebbe wrote, it's not only because of that. It's not. Okay. The fact is, it's not. So that makes it better, but it still doesn't answer the kasha. See, if it's a Hemshech, it's Mamish, he's telling you two opposite things at the same time. He's telling you, don't go, but go. That makes no sense. So the Rebbe weakens it by saying, no, he's not doing that. Tell you, don't go. Then he tells you later something else. So he's not telling you a stira b'basacha. Nevertheless, the kasha is still a kasha. Kasha is sof kol sov. You could go, and here he said you shouldn't go. So the same thing would be a stira to what it says in Parsha Bamidbar. Would be also a stira. But the way it was before, the stira is even bigger. He's telling you at the same time, don't go. But you could go. Don't go to them because I don't want you to think of Asidis. And now go to the Navi. So the Rebbe says, first of all, a new parsha. That's making it weaker. It's not a stira meneu bay, but there's still a kasha. So the answer is l'kachke. Schenken al Ramban, according to the Ramban, she'ein perusha pshuta shel mikradavke. The Ramban doesn't go normal pshat. Pirish tomim, so tomim is touched differently. Sholim, complete. That's why he says Tomim b'choleila. That's why he says Kanal Siv Gimel like before. Tomim means complete, but in these things. It says after Tomim Tiyeh that the Goyim go to the main and you go to the Novi. He says it's a hemshech. It's a reason. Ki means according to the Ramban because sheyokim bekir b'chanovi, and this is the lashon that he writes. He'll bring a Novi amongst you, and the Eibushter will put his words in his mouth. You will ask him You'll hear from him what Eibishter is doing. But LKS, when you look for the future, you won't have to look in the future by the casement. They don't know what they're talking about. It's not true. They won't be able to tell you what you need. And everything will be true. So the Rabban learns it's a hemshech. Rashi learns it's not a hemshech. So number one, it's not even hemshech. He's not contradicting himself. According to Rabban, it's not a contradiction of Adi, because he's telling you they don't know what they're talking about. Go to Navi. That's fine. But Rashi says it means don't ask. It's a contradiction, but it's not a stira minei ubei. Not a contradiction itself, but nevertheless he answers it. But the pale is the shaila. What happens to Akim when there is no Navi? If there is no Navi, according to the Ramban, if the whole reason he says don't go to them because I have a Navi, what about if you don't have a Navi when there's no Nevi'im? So in order 28 the Rebbe says, Avo movement shebecholei from Gamla Ramban, that he says Yokem Agei Mutam. You can't go to them, and you can't go to them anyway, obviously, because they don't know what they're talking about. But maybe I look into Asidus other ways. He says, no, you can only ask a Novi. If you don't ask, if you know Novi, the Rebbe says, and he brings the Shulchan Aruch and they say Caleb. Okay. So this is all how we answer the Rashi and the difference in Rashi and the Ramban, etc., etc. Rashi always has halacha is like this. And this mitzvah of Tomim Tiyim Hashem Alekecha is a plukta the Rambam Rambam. The Cholek is Rambam and the Ramban, and Nimni B'mini mitzvahs if you count them into mitzvahs. A Rambam Leihevi B'Sefer Mitzvah Shalei. The Rambam doesn't count it. Although we know there are 630 mitzvahs. There are certain rules which things are counted in the mitzvahs and not, and that means there are more than 630 times what it says in the Torah do or don't do, but not everything is counted. There are certain rules. So the Rambam does not count this mitzvah. Ramban basagay said money. The Ramban does count it, and he says loshen shenitztaveinu liis lebaveinu tomim imei yisborach. That we were commanded to be our heart should be tomim with Hashem. Messiah and the Ramban finishes off. Ulay choshev Arav. He's explaining why did the Rambam not count it. The Rambam holds shitzavo kilelas hamitzvahs. We know one of the rules is any mitzvah that includes all the mitzvahs. When the pasuk says keep all the mitzvahs, so it's a commandment. But that's not part of the minyan mitzvahs because it includes all the mitzvahs. So the Rambam holds, the Rambam says, that Tomim Tiyah also includes everything. It includes all the mitzvahs, the leches v'darkater, to go in the Torah. The lochem lehevi b'cheshbrein, that's he brings this cheshbon because it's a mitzvah quality. Now the shaila is, what does the Ramban hold? Yesh leimer the ozlo b'pluk tezul if shitosam pirish akos of Tomim Tiyah. Could be the machlekes, the Rambam and the Ramban is posher how we touch Tomim Tiyah. And this way goes. Kos of Rambam, the Rambam writes, the Tam Kol Yisurim Meil, and the reason of all these prohibitions that you can't go to the mechashvin, to the magicians, etc. He writes like this: "The dvarim meilu kulam divri sheker because of him. They're all lies. Ein royal Yisrael shem chachamim uchotomim laham shebavolim meilu. Yidden who are smart shouldn't go with the stupidities. Balei achachma utmimei adas, smart people yedu berayas brura shekol eilu advarim uteva hevel. Smart people know that all these things are narishkeit and stupidity. Shenimshach behem chasrei adas. Today to mention, not normal people went to logical dark chemical. People, stupid people, followed them, left the true way and went to them. That's what the Torah said. When it warns you against all this, that means this is stupid. People who don't know das think that they're good. And the Torah says, Tomim Tiyah, be Tomim. How does the Rambam learn Tomim? Hainu means, Rambam mefarish, the Tomim Tiyah, inyon tmimus v'shlemas hadas. Your mind should be clear. It should be a complete mind. Don't be stupid. That's how he teaches. But Mela movement should see the Kalel. The Mela, we understand what the Ramban means that he holds, that it's a mitzvah that contains everything. What is the teichne of it? Be your mind should be complete with Hashem. And B'Mela, what should happen? It includes all the commandments of the Eibishter. Therefore, even though the Pasuk Tomim Tiyah is written here concerning not listening to all the stupidities of these magicians, the meaning of it is shaykhs to all the mitzvahs. Because it's like it means your mind should do seichel. You should have seichel with the Eibishter. That's what seichel should be. It happens to be written here, and the Rebbe in the Ha'orah goes in that the Shaila, where do we get the Isser of not going to them? Could be it's from here, but that's also only a result from Tomim. Tomim Matiyah is a klolas the Gezach that your mind, you should be smart, that the Eibishter's things are right, not what they're doing. So that's a klal. Now the Ramban, he said what it means is our mind should be miyuchat to the Eibishter, to believe that he does everything. Only from him we should ask for what's going to happen in the future. It's saying because he could change the stars and the solar system, etc., etc. So according to that, ain't it tzivuk kelo? It's not that tzivuk for all the mitzvahs. This tomim tiyah. To believe in the Eibishter is something klal for all the mitzvahs. But the tomim tiyah here means the emunah that you have in the Eibishter versus these things. It's not something negated to all the mitzvahs. To change the system, the solar system. That's why you shouldn't go to ask him. So this is a specific mitzvah. Don't ask these people things because you should have a munah, they should do what he wants, and they don't know what they're talking about. So it's specific to this. According to the Rambam, it's not specific to this. It's b'chol your da should be tomim. So the Rambam holds it in quality. So it's not part of the Tayag mitzvah. The Ramban holds it's a specific thing has to do with these things, and like he says in here in Parsha, that you should be tomim b'inyonim elu. You should be what? Your mind should know that you have to be tomim with the Eibishter, the gaba these things. So it's a specific thing. But Rashi, which is Pshutei Shel Mikra, the Tomim Loshen Shalom Loshen Tmimis, here it's Loshen Tmimis, Hari Poshet Shuzui Mitzvah Pratis. That's a pratistic mitzvah, for sure. It's Talachim B'Tmimis. We were just saying how you should be going with the Eibishter. Not that you should keep all the mitzvahs. It's telling you a certain mindset that you have to have. That's a pratistic mitzvah. There's a certain mindset. You have to have a certain sincerity. He's giving us a mitzvah of sincerity. That's what it is. And therefore, mitzvahs. It fits in the mitzvahs. So Rashi learns Tomim means, like he says, that you have to accept the Eibishter b'tmimus. So even though it means all the mitzvahs, but it's not telling you to keep all the mitzvahs. It's telling you, be sincere. That's a tzivut Eibishter says. What you should do. You should approach. So this is neisev ala mitzvahs leisas shalifnezah. This comes in addition to the mitzvahs leisas. All those that look for the future, that's leisas. But besides that, there's a general mitzvah of sincerity, and that's a mitzvah pratis, of being sincere with the Eibishter. But mainly you will not look after Hasidus, etc., etc. And the Rebbe adds, then you'll be with him in his chaylik. And then the last paragraph, the Rebbe wrote B'Ksav Yad, added the last paragraph, and he wrote, maybe you could say that game it avas havaya. See, the Psukim has a few protips. So by keeping this part of the pasuk, that you shouldn't be amongst you shouldn't find amongst you those who do these things, which is a disgusting thing to Hashem. For that, the schar is tiya imei. If you don't do things disgusting things, you'll be with him. Because you gamet tzapale, then the second part of the next words of Rashi, and you should hope to him, and whatever happens, you accept it mimis, then yigam lechelke, you'll also be part of his chelik. He doesn't tie you as it means, but that's what the Rebbe wrote in Tzavya. Many other things he wrote, but I'm saying here the whole paragraph the Rebbe put in as a sof to this sikha. So now we see everything how it fits, almost like a puzzle in every word in Rashi. Okay. Stofar was.
Good.
Ja, gute Nacht allemaal.
Gute Nacht.
I greet from New York.
Good. Oh, good.
I greet from New York. You're not New York.
Oh, so gebet and all is good.
I'll tell you about it another time. I'll remind you.
Good.
Sehr good. A gute Nacht.